So, the root of the frustration at the core of the ongoing civil unrest around the world is that people don't feel like the cities we live in, nor our governments in general, actually protect us, represent us, or have our best interests in mind. People feel that we are victims of tyrants who built a system to enslave and torture us, and that's basically how it is. However, to effectively resolve this problem, we need to define the kind of society that we truly want to live in, which would actually represent our well being and desires. And we also have to define the process by which we want to reach that new society. Destruction alone isn't going to build the world that we desire. We have to look at the next steps, we have to look into the future and what's going to be required to build what we want, as well as how we're going to protect that from those who are going to continue to want to steal our freedom. So I want to encourage everyone to spend time imagining the kind of world that you truly want to live in and communicating with others in that creative context. That sort of speculation in regards to what we truly want from the world is a far more productive thing to talk about in the present moment than most of the things that people are talking about. Anyways, I'm now going to examine my imagination of a more perfect society, which would actually support humanity's collective well-being and growth. If only I could get millions of people to imagine this idea with me and dedicate their lives to creating it. Easier said than done. And even if you don't like my idea, hopefully it'll encourage your own creative speculation a little bit. Also, in light of the current frustration encompassing the world, I do feel the need to mention that within my ideal sort of society, cops would obviously be held to the highest standards of the law and sent to prison if they murder people in cold blood. That's just clearly how it should be. It would also be extremely important to me that there be much more comprehensive psychological testing to become a police officer, so that we don't get all these, small-minded, sadistic cops who literally chose their role in the world because they enjoy hurting people who can't fight back. There absolutely needs to be psychological testing of that sort if we're going to give deadly weapons to people and ask them to protect us. Nobody who we ask to protect humanity should be motivated by an enjoyment of harming people. That's kind of repulsive and disgusting and way too common. That sort of thing, that sort of psychological testing is something that supersedes my utopian fantasy, in which we actually need to incorporate into the real world sooner rather than later, though. But yeah, I just had to get that disclaimer out of the way. So now I'm going to talk about my utopian version of a magic fantasy world. So first things first, the most important component of a functioning society is simply maintaining the opportunity to eat healthy diets and to drink clean water. After that, the next most important component of society is shelter. Everything past those two things is kind of a luxury, honestly. So our current society is a bit insane because we prioritize the production of a ton of pointless luxuries for a minority of the population, while a much larger percentage of the population is constantly threatened by an inability to eat or to drink or to have a safe place to sleep. They're just constantly on the edge, and I don't think it has to be that way at all. I think it's kind of been designed that way by psychopaths who've been tricking everybody for a long time. Anyhow, when I picture an idealized society, I picture a society which makes it its first priority to make certain that all people have the opportunity to eat, to drink, and to have a safe place to sleep. And there's a certain format I envision which I believe would make all of those things much easier to accomplish than the current format of society. First of all, though, we wouldn't rely on the government for any of those things. We would rely on our own micro-communities and our ability to network with and help one another to provide those things. So I'm just going to jump into the whole outline. So in my vision of a more perfect future for humanity, the majority of people would live in essentially 10 to 500 person self-sufficient communal estates and campgrounds, where they would primarily manage fancy greenhouses and orchards and other crops so as to ensure that there's never any threat of starvation to anyone, just producing excess food everywhere. That's half of what people would do. Having a larger cohesive unit of people working together on properties would dramatically lower the amount of resources required from each individual to put into the property as well. Our current housing market is a bit of a prison because people will go into massive debt just so that they can effectively separate themselves from everyone else and then spend their whole lives paying off that debt so bankers can own more houses than they ever will, without actually really doing anything to earn them, because, Banks, yay, debt. Anyhow, having people coordinate with larger family units or just their friends and colleagues who they truly appreciate to work together to build communal estates that they, you know, you actually have like a sense of community with, that would dramatically cut down on the investment necessary from each individual person to own the property, and it would also give us a much stronger and cohesive sense of community and support. Getting redundant there because I went off script. Anyhow, the glue which would hold these communes together, these fantasy communes, would be that a decent percentage of the population, like maybe 5 to 10% of the population, would essentially spend their time as travelers and traders, and networking online with the needs of the various communes, and you know, bringing resources from one to the other and helping out with the maintenance of the property while they stayed for various lengths of time at each estate. You know, sometimes moving with the seasons to wherever resources are produced. And they'd all drive RVs or modified semis with a place to sleep, and, you know, because it's the perfect future, they'd all be solar powered, of course. And the estates would be designed to regularly host such travelers and guests, either in extra rooms or simply in their campers or in tents. And this would kind of allow them to more easily normalize themselves as a coherent support structure for homeless people as well, because, you know, we'd have the opportunity to allow a few homeless people to simply camp out and help out regardless of their access to money. You know, most homeless people are fairly functional and more than willing to help out if they can have a safe place to stay. It's just that it's difficult for them to conform to the way labor works in our current society. If they were able to just volunteer to work in greenhouses and trim orchards and help out with self-sufficient communes for a place to sit, or for a place to safely pitch a tent and receive food, that would be a much healthier lifestyle than what a lot of homeless people are currently exposed to. Now, obviously, everybody who owned each individual commune would only have to keep people there that they want to live with, but hopefully there would be enough of a variety of different energies of communes that would that you know, with the normalization of traveling around and meeting different communes and helping out, everybody would eventually be able to find somewhere that they felt a sense of, you know, stronger community and kinship, and be able to kind of live with people who feel like a real tribe to them. Our current society kind of frequently lacks a sense of general coherent community, even though I think people really yearn to feel more connected to one another. A lot of people become easily isolated from everyone else, and some people are kind of constantly predatory, which leads to other people sort of losing their empathy for others because they assume that people might be out to get them, which I think is largely artificial to the general formatting, due to the general formatting of a society which allows people to easily fall through the cracks, and then sort of encourages us to victim blame the people who fall through the cracks rather than helping to empower us to be able to effectively empower other people and give them safety and opportunities. It's all kind of cutthroat and nonsense. But in my magic visionary utopia, where half of people can abandon traditional jobs and just take care of the sustainability of their own commune with their own kind of tribe of people, it would be much easier to provide like injured veterans and people who've fallen on hard times with the opportunity to help support these smaller communities and just have a safe place to exist within them. Now, in a way, this sort of thing wouldn't be too hard to get started, because all it takes would be like a group of 10 to 100 people with a like mind getting together and investing in some land, and then going off to, you know, get it organized, possibly live in campers and tents while they plant orchards and greenhouses and electric generators and start to make the area self-sufficient. Because we have the technology to make things self-sufficient pretty easily. It's just a matter of like that being our priority, that being what we actually want to do. Also, in a similar vein, we could sort of just terraform all of our own cities in that direction. We could just make all of our property into food forests and then trade with our neighbors once society collapses and we're no longer getting supermarkets stocked with produce from farmers. The only problem there is that, of course, not very many people actually own property because the whole system is rigged, and everybody who does own property owes their whole life to the infinite abyss of the banking system, which is sort of what enforces the current society and stops any better society from forming. It might also actually be easy just to coordinate with current farmers and random people in rural communities to just say, hey, would you like to have some people help you out with your farm and make it into an even more self-sufficient operation if you just, share food with us and let us sleep in our campers? Just basically for free, just give us somewhere safe to exist, and we'll make it we'll make your operation kick ass. That sort of thing might not be as difficult as some of the other things, or some of the other random speculations that I've gone over here. Oh, I'm getting tired. I don't like putting on a facade to make to sound a certain way. Anyways, coordinating with farmers in that regard actually might be the sort of thing that could save a lot of lives, given the fact that we're kind of looking at some crazy stuff that's happening in the world right now. But yeah, didn't want to dive too far into the theory crafting nonsense. I mean, unless more people want to listen to me, at which point I will gladly theory craft the entire perfect reality that we should create. But for now, I just wanted to provide that sort of outline of something that I like to think about when I imagine the kind of world that I would much rather live in than the current one that we're stuck with. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Thanks for joining me in my little fantasy world. I hope that I've encouraged you to speculate about your own sort of version of paradise, so that after society inevitably crumbles and burns to ash, we can more efficiently begin to build the sort of world that we all actually want to live in.